Howdy, friends. I'm Joel Empey, and welcome to another episode of Joel Empey Talks NFL. And on today's episode, we are going to look at the top 20 quarterbacks, top 20 defenses, going into Week 15, your semifinals in fantasy football, so you can decide who are the best players to start at those two key streaming positions. And we're also going to look at top bets of the week for Week 15. We're going to look at must-watch games of the week for Week 15. But we're going to start today's episode by looking at the AFC East. Now that the Patriots are starting to falter a little bit, can the Bills knock them off? So can the Bills knock the Patriots off? If you look right now, the Patriots have one more win, one fewer loss on the season compared to the Bills' record, and they still have to play each other one time. So if the Bills win that game, and provided that the Bills win that game and win out, and, assuming that the Patriots, who have a very easy schedule, the Patriots' schedule, by the way, remaining games, they play the Bengals, then they play the Bills, and then they play the Dolphins. So, even the Patriots playing some of the worst football you've seen the Patriots play in decades are easily going to beat the Bengals and the Dolphins, right? Easily. They could for sure lose to the Bills, who are a pretty great team right now. Patriots are playing some of the worst football in decades. They could lose to the Bills. So if they go 2-1, and then the Bills, they have a tougher schedule. They have to beat the Steelers this week, who are another playoff team. So they have to beat the Steelers. And if they can do that, then they have to beat the Patriots, which, that's two pretty tall orders consecutively. But then they get to end the season with the Jets. Should be, I don't want to say guaranteed win, but that, if you beat the Steelers and then the Patriots, let's assume that you're going to beat the Jets in Week 17. So assuming the Patriots can beat the Bengals, fair assumption. They're going to beat the Dolphins, fair assumption. Then the Patriots would lose in this hypothetical scenario in Week 16 to the Bills. They would have the same record at the end of the year if the Bills went on this run. So if they have the same record, who would be the AFC East winner? So first tiebreaker in the NFL is head-to-head record. Two teams head-to-head against one another. Well, the Bills and the Pats would be split 1-1. The Patriots beat the Bills earlier this year, so it would be a 1-1 split in that series. So then, second tiebreaker would be the divisional record on the season. And if the Bills and the Patriots, win out, with the exception of the Bills obviously beating the Patriots, they would have the same divisional record. They would both be 5-1, undefeated in their division except for their one loss to one another. So they would be tied on that. So it would have to go to the third tiebreaker, record against common opponents. And I looked into it, and they have a common opponent that the Bills have lost to, that the Patriots beat. So the Patriots would still best the Bills, even if they have a tied record at the end of the season, via the third tiebreaker, just simply because the Patriots beat the Eagles earlier this year, and somehow the Bills lost to the terrible Philadelphia Eagles earlier this year. So the Bills don't have a great chance at being able to knock off the Patriots and be able to win the division. It's looking like the Bills, whom they might have the second or third best record in the entire AFC, and they're going to have to come in as the 5 seed and have to go on the road all the way through the playoffs if they want to contend. For the Bills to knock off the Patriots would basically have to lose one of their games against the Bengals or the Dolphins, which seems extraordinarily unlikely, and the Bills would have to run the table, which would be tough wins against the Steelers, tough win against the Patriots, aforementioned, easy win against the Jets, but it's not looking very likely that the Bills are going to be able to steal this division, although it's looking like I think that they're probably a better team than the Patriots at this point, and I think that I will favor the provided that nothing drastic happens here in Week 15, I'll probably be looking to favor the Bills in Week 16 against New England. My first must-watch game for Week 15, we were already talking about Buffalo, so let's talk about them some more. Buffalo at Pittsburgh. This is a game between the number 5 seed and the number 6 seed, who are currently slotted in the AFC playoffs. So these are both wildcard teams, both playoff caliber teams. Who knows if Pittsburgh will make the playoffs by year's end, but if they can get this win against Buffalo, it'll go a long way towards getting them into the playoffs by year's end. So, Buffalo versus Pittsburgh. Let's start talking about Ducky Hodges, old Devlin Hodges. Technically undefeated as a starter, even though he came into this year as like the Steelers' fourth quarterback, because obviously, Roethlisberger, Rudolph, they had Dobbs, who they traded to Jacksonville, I believe, once Foles got hurt. And then you look at old Ducky, he's number 4, undrafted guy, and he's been undefeated so far this year. It looks like Juju and James Conner are both, right now, the speculation is that they're both are going to play in the game on this weekend, which, massively improves the offensive potential for the Pittsburgh Steelers. On the flip side, I think the Bills are a top 10 NFL team right now. I don't feel quite the same about the Steelers. I think the Steelers, with their defense, they can give anybody fits and they could potentially beat anybody even. But, they just struggled a little bit against the Cardinals. Now, like I said, Smith-Schuster, Connor will be back, so that'll greatly advantage the Steelers in this one. But, the Bills have an elite defense. Josh Allen has just been very clutch this year in finding ways to will the team to win in key situations. Like when they were going down on 4th down against the Ravens, they lost to the Ravens, the hottest team in football. They lost by a single score to the Ravens. When they were going down and it was 4th down, I honestly thought that the Bills were going to score a touchdown there and tie the game up, because Josh Allen has just been clutch in key situations all year long. So the Bills right now, they have to take on another playoff team, in the Steelers, who have the second best defense in the NFL, before the Bills have to go again to play the best defense in the NFL in the Patriots. So the Bills got their work cut out for them in the next 2 weeks. But man, if they can go on a run here, beat the Steelers, beat the Patriots, the Jets should be a gimme after that. They would have a lot of momentum and a lot of confidence riding sky high going into the playoffs. God, you got to love December football. It's so obvious and clear what the stakes are for each game. So, this is like a playoff game, the Steelers and the Bills, particularly for the Steelers. The Steelers have got to win to keep their playoff hopes seeming likely. And then the Bills, obviously, they want to win out and try to steal this AFC East. Although, as I just went over it, it's going to be tough for them to do because the Patriots would have to lose to the Bengals or the Dolphins. But, man, December football, when you know what's on the line, playoffs on the line, you can see exactly what every win and loss means for each team. God, it's great. My number 1 must-watch game in Week 15 is Houston at Tennessee. The Titans, I'm a bit of a broken record now. For the last few weeks, I've just been talking about the Titans on every episode of this show. They're my favorite team in football right now. Tannehill is probably my favorite player in football right now. I love the Titans. I can't get enough of it. I think they're playing great. I think that they're basically a shoo-in to make the playoffs at this point with how well they're playing, which could spell trouble for the Pittsburgh Steelers because the Titans could sneak in as that 6th seed. But it should be worrying the Houston Texans, who they're playing this weekend, even more, because in the last 3 games of the season, the Texans and the Titans play each other 2 times. They play here in Week 15, and they play again in Week 17. Right now, the Texans and the Titans have a tied record. So if you are one of those 2 teams, if you sweep the series right now, if you can beat the other team both times, you're guaranteed in the playoffs. You're guaranteed going to win the division. There's no possible way for the other team to take it from you if you win both games. So let's look at that gap game in the center for both these teams. Now for the Texans, they get to play the Buccaneers. Buccaneers, they're not total slouches, but that's an extremely winnable game. If you're a playoff caliber team, you're beating the Buccaneers, right? Let's look at who the Titans have to play in the interim. In the middle there, in that gap week, sandwiched between games against the Texans, the Titans have to play New Orleans. The Saints, a top 3 NFL team. Saints could beat anybody on any given Sunday without a doubt. That's going to be a tough out for the Titans. I definitely am not going to favor the Titans in that game. So for the Titans, even more so than the Texans, for both teams, if you sweep the series, you automatically are in the playoffs. But for the Texans having that extremely tough game in the middle, the Titans having that extremely tough game in the middle, and the Texans having an easy game in the middle, it is must-win games for the Titans. They have to win these games. Meanwhile, 2 weeks ago, the Texans beat the Patriots. They throw 4 touchdown passes against the Patriots. I believe the Patriots had only given up 4 touchdown passes in the entire season before that game. And the Texans threw 4 touchdown passes against them. It was starting to look like, oh shoot, maybe the Texans are getting hot right now, even though the Titans are super hot, and like that's not good for the Titans because things were trending in the right direction for them. Then the Texans knock off the Patriots, and it's like, oh damn, maybe things are not trending in the right direction for the Titans. But then, just this past week, the Texans got mollywopped by the Broncos. The final score is not indicative of how just utterly embarrassed the Texans were in that game. So the Texans, so they looked just horrendous last week. The Titans, second hottest team in football. They're the hottest team in football, not named the Baltimore Ravens. The Texans are on a 4-game win streak. 3 out of 4 of those wins have been extremely dominant. They're 6-1 since Ryan Tannehill took over as the starting quarterback. The Titans are hot right now. Derrick Henry's a battering ram. Ryan Tannehill, dude, why couldn't this guy throw a deep ball when he was on Miami? That was one of the biggest gripes that I always had with Ryan Tannehill is he had such poor deep ball accuracy. Dude, he's ripping deep balls with the Titans. I don't know what it is, but he's revitalized. He's playing the best football of his career. That defense is stout. Mike Vrabel's a legit coach. Derrick Henry's a battering ram. The Titans are hot right now, baby. And this is basically a playoff game for these two teams. It's my number 1 must-watch game Sunday this week. Top bets of the week for week 15. We've been talking about the Bills all day, so let's talk about them some more. Bills plus 1.5 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Sure, it is at Pittsburgh, but the Bills as underdogs. I love the Bills this week. I would favor the Bills probably, especially barring anything crazy happening this week, I'm probably going to favor the Bills going into week 16 against the Patriots. So, who's the best team that Pittsburgh's beaten this year? Answer, either the Colts or the Rams. Those are the 2 best teams. And at the time when they beat the Colts were a lot better than they are right now. Like the Colts were actually a decent team at that point in time. And when they beat the Rams were worse than they are right now. Like the Rams are actually kind of surging right now, showing some promise. This wasn't the Rams team that the Steelers beat. The Rams team that the Steelers beat was a pitiful, sad, sorry Rams team. Although I think the Steelers would probably beat the current Rams team that's hot just because Goff is terrible under pressure. The Steelers defense is so elite. But I digress. If you look at the power rankings from my episode just last week, very interestingly, at the 14, 15, 16 turn, I had the Steelers at 14. I had the Rams at 15 and the Colts at 16. So even like last week, I had the Steelers in my mind as a better team than the Rams or the Colts. And I wasn't, pouring over the Steelers record when I made those power rankings. I was just sort of generally grabbing. So I already think that the Steelers are a better team than the Colts or the Rams. And those are the best wins of the year for the Steelers. The best wins of the year are teams that they should have beaten, right? They've never beaten a team that I have ranked higher than them. The Bills in my power rankings last week, I had at 9th. I would remain them in the top 10. I would maybe even move them up to 8th. I had the Texans at 8th because obviously they had beaten the Patriots. But then the Texans look so bad against the Broncos. I might even, have the Bills up, in the top 8 NFL teams. So I just don't think the Steelers are a good enough team to beat the Bills. As simply as that. I think the Bills are a better football team. And I think that they're hungrier. And I think that they're going to come out here and get the W. So as dogs, even though it's only a 1.5, it's basically a pick 'em. I would like the line if it was flipped. Like if the Bills were 1.5 point favorites. If the Bills were 2.5 point favorites, I would still probably like them. I like them to win by a field goal in this one. Now, sure, there are a couple of maybe red flags-ish. The news that Smith-Schuster and Connor will probably be in for the Steelers. That makes me hesitate just a little bit. So what I would suggest is if you are nervous by the news that Connor and Smith-Schuster are going to be in the game, if later on down the week, it's confirmed these guys are definitely in the game, and that makes you not want to take the Bills as 1.5 point underdogs, I would suggest maybe considering the over bet. The over-under right now is 36.5 points, like a 20-17 game. Hits the over on that. And, if you're nervous that the Bills aren't going to be able to win because of the Connor and Smith-Schuster aspect on the Steelers, then you're probably thinking that the game's going to be, at least a little bit more high scoring than originally thought. And if that is the case, then it should hit the over. It's by far the lowest over-under on the week, and rightfully so. It should be a really low over-under. And I don't really know where to bet on the over-under. Now, yeah, if Connor and Smith-Schuster are in the game, that is a bet. Like, and that makes you nervous to take the Bills plus 1.5, then I would go with the over bet. But as I am, even with Smith-Schuster and Connor in that game, I just believe that the Bills are going to find a way to get that W. I love the Bills plus 1.5 at Pittsburgh. Now, my second bet of the week, which is my favorite bet of the week, is the Vikings minus 2.5 at the Chargers. Now, I know the Chargers just had a big offensive week, and you might be worried about, traveling west, being on the road for the Vikings, but minus 2.5 is such a small margin. Like, do you think the LA Chargers, the 5-8 LA Chargers, are going to beat the 9-4, one of the best NFC teams fighting for that division win, against the Packers who, looked not great last week? Do you think the Chargers are going to beat the Vikings? Like, it's minus 2.5. That's basically, that's pretty close to a pick'em. Like, you don't think the Vikings are going to win by a field goal? The Vikings in their 9 wins this year have won the smallest margin, I should say, that the Vikings have won by in their 9 games this year is 4 points. The Vikings are 4th in the NFL in net points. They average a margin of victory is 12.78 points per win. Translation on all of that is that the Vikings blow out worse teams. Like, you can't have the 4th best net points in the NFL. I believe they're positive 90 in net points. 4th best in the NFL. Their average margin of win is 12.78 points. Like, they just dominate. They shit on bad teams. They absolutely win by massive margins. Once again, I know it's a road game. I know the Chargers just put up, a good week against Jacksonville, who may be the worst defense in the NFL right now. Like, what a fall from grace in the last 2 years Jacksonville has had. Maybe the worst defense in the NFL right now. I think the Vikings smash the Chargers. I think it's going to be more than a 1-score game. Like, I think that they win by 9-10 points. Like, it'll be more than 8. That's what I'm predicting. So minus 2.5, like, that's just free money in my opinion. I love the Vikings. I don't think this line, like, even if the line starts going towards the Viking side, like, I don't think the line can get far enough. If it started at minus 2.5, I don't think it can get far enough for me to be dissuaded from picking the Vikings in this one. That's my number 1 bet of the week. Lock it up, baby. So here are my top 20 fantasy quarterbacks for week 15 and their matchups. So the point of this is to help you discern who you should start and who you should sit. Basically, start the guy who I have ranked the highest. Also, this is Tuesday morning that I'm recording this, so it is possible that later on down the week, rankings could fluctuate and whatnot. So if you have any ranking questions, even if it's about a position that I'm not talking about here, because I'm only talking about quarterbacks and defenses, the main streaming positions, because screw tight end, then just hit me up in the YouTube comments and I would be happy to give you my advice on who you should start and who you should sit. Obviously, a lot of these guys at the top of the list, in the top 10 or so of this list are already owned. You might not have an opportunity to play them or whatever. So this is really more about, getting down into the guys who are more into the waivers, or, if you have 2 of these guys, who you should start between the 2. Anyways, without further ado, obviously Lamar Jackson at the Jets, number 1. Watson at Tennessee, number 2. Tannehill versus Houston, number 3. So basically, I'm predicting it's the highest over-under on the week, Houston and Tennessee. I think that's going to just, end up being a bit of a shootout. I think Houston keeps it competitive. I think Tennessee scores a lot of points because Houston's defense, not so great. Tennessee's defense, very good, but I think Houston keeps up. I like Watson and Tannehill. They both have rushing potential. And Tannehill is a guy that likely by now is owned. Likely in the last few weeks, somebody has in your league has been wise enough to pick up Ryan Tannehill and already owns him. But there is a chance that he is available. And if Ryan Tannehill is available, he is the number one must pick up. There is no wide receiver, running back. There's nobody out there who is as valuable as Ryan Tannehill. I think he's definitely a top 5 quarterback this week. I obviously have him ranked at number 3. I think if he's available, you have to go get him. We got Winston at Detroit for, obviously Mike Evans being gone hurts him a little bit, but Winston just slings the dang rock. We got Breeze versus Indy at 5. Indy is just, they're falling apart. They got absolutely scorched by Winston last week. We got Mayfield at Arizona. I don't know what's not to like about Mayfield at Arizona. Arizona is just absolutely horrendous. Mahomes versus Denver. That's a no-brainer. Wilson at Carolina. Carolina's just been just so abysmal lately. We got Kyler Murray versus Cleveland. I think that the opportunity is going to be there. Obviously, Arizona runs a lot of plays. I think, obviously, if I have Mayfield at 6, I think that Cleveland's going to score a lot. So Kyler Murray and Arizona are once again going to have to try to keep up, which should be good for Murray's fantasy value. I like Garoppolo versus Atlanta. He's a guy that you might be able to get off the waiver wire. Dude's been hot. He's been hot. Obviously, 2 weeks ago against, the Ravens in the pouring rain wasn't the best, but he's shown you, in plus matchups against like Arizona, he put up 28 points both times. This past week, he showed, a real ability to score a lot of fantasy points. So Garoppolo's a guy that I would definitely be willing to throw out there this week. We've got Dak Prescott versus the Rams. He's probably owned. Jared Goff at Dallas. He's also probably owned. I think that game will be a bit of a shootout, so I like both those guys. Wentz at Washington, I might even lower him as the week goes on. I kind of don't even like him at 13 right now after how terrible he looked last night against the Giants. Sure, he's been over 300 yards and multiple touchdowns now in consecutive weeks, but that's against the Dolphins and the Giants. Washington, not a lot better defensively, but definitely a little bit better defensively. I don't love Wentz this week. I've got him in the league where I'm, in the playoffs, and I don't know if I'm going to roll him out there or if I'm going to try to, make a desperate play for someone else. We got Aaron Rodgers versus Chicago. Rodgers and, the Packers, not great last week. They're kind of like the Patriots right now where Brady is just, I don't have faith in Brady. You can see he's not even on my top 20. You have to give a little bit, Rodgers has that high upside even against a Bears defense. The Bears haven't been the Bears, defense from last year, but they're still a decent defense. I think Rodgers has the potential to boom in this game, which is, why I have him ranked. We got Ryan at 15, Matt Ryan at San Francisco, 15. He's likely also already owned. San Francisco, not a great matchup, although Drew Brees exploited it last week. I think San Fran's going to score quite a bit. Atlanta always playing, from behind, so that'll give Ryan opportunities to score. I like Matt Ryan this week, actually, even though it's a bad matchup. Gardner Minshew, it'll be no DJ Chark likely, but Minshew offers you a little bit of a rushing floor. He also, Oakland, very favorable matchup. People have just been scorching Oakland, Oakland just gave up so many bad touchdowns last week and even the week before against the Chiefs. The Raiders are in disarray right now. And we've got Carr versus Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville's probably the worst defense in the NFL right now. That's not an exaggeration. Go back and watch them play against the Chargers. They're just pitiful. They've given up on the year. They're done. They just want Marone out of there. They just want this year to be over and behind them. So I think Carr is going to be a good streamer this week as well. I like Minshew and Carr both as streamers this week. Trubisky, I think Trubisky's been playing better football as of recently. Green Bay is not the defense that they had at the start of the year. They're an exposable defense. I think Trubisky's got some good upside in this game. I would be willing to start him. Cousins, I don't love because in positive game scripts, the Vikings, they just don't throw the ball that much, and Cousins' upside is extremely capped because of that, in my opinion. He should be a pretty decently safe play. Like, he'll probably throw 200 yards and 1 touchdown. Probably put up a dozen points for you, but I don't think he's going to hit 20. So I don't like Cousins. And then Brissett at New Orleans. The only reason why Brissett's not higher is because of the injuries on the Colts and stuff. New Orleans can be exposed in the passing game, and I think that they're going to put up a ton of points. I have Breeze all the way up at 5, as you can see. So I think that the Saints are going to put up a ton of points, which makes a good game script for Brissett to score a lot of fantasy points, which is why he squeaks into my top 20. You could play Brissett this week as a streamer. I don't know if I love that play. I probably like him better than Cousins. I should probably flip those two. So I would probably lower Wentz to below, probably to like 17, and I would probably swap Cousins and Brissett. But that's my top 20 quarterbacks for Week 15. Now, looking at my top 20 defenses, once again, a lot of these top-level defenses are going to be owned. So this is more about, seeing where you might be able to pick a team off the waivers, or if you have two defenses, deciding between the two. Although I'm not sure why you would have two defenses, unless if you have one defense for Week 15 and one defense set up for Week 16. Anyways, here are my top 20 defenses. Patriots at Cincinnati, no-brainer. Ravens at the Jets, no-brainer. Eagles at Washington. You might be able to get the Eagles off the waiver wire. I don't know exactly what their ownership percentage is right now, but it's possible you might be able to get the Eagles off the waiver wire. Steelers versus Buffalo, they're not going to be available. Seahawks at Carolina, that's possible. You might be able to get them. Be a huge play this week. Bills at Pittsburgh, I love that. Love that play. If James Conner's in, I like it a little bit less. Smith-Schuster doesn't really change my opinion too much. 49ers versus Atlanta. Obviously, the 49ers have such a vaunted defense. Joey Bosa and, Buckner and all those guys on the D-line are going to get after Matt Ryan with that terrible Atlanta offensive line. So, I'm expecting turnovers. I'm expecting sacks. I should probably even have the 49ers up higher now that I think about it a little bit more. But 49ers versus Atlanta. I love the 49ers. They're not going to be available in your league, though, so I don't know why I'm talking about it so much. Vikings at the Chargers. Don't know if the Vikings are available, but that'd be a great play. Then we got the Packers and the Bears. I think that is going to be a defensive game. I don't think it's going to be a great offensive game. I think both teams will probably... I think it'll be like a 20-17 type of a game. So I'd probably bet the under on that game as well, now that I think about it. Saints versus Indianapolis. Like the Saints, I think that, with all the injuries on the Colts, the Saints could especially the Saints at home, I think that they could get some takeaways, make some big plays defensively. I like the Saints this week. They're probably available to get as well. Browns at Arizona. This is more just attacking Arizona and Kyler Murray, knowing that they're going to throw the ball probably a million times because the Browns will likely have a nice lead because Arizona's defense is so bad. So basically, I think that Arizona's going to throw the ball a million times. That's going to, give the Browns more opportunities for sacks, give the Browns more opportunities for interceptions, possibilities of defensive touchdowns, so on and so forth. I think you roll out, if it's a decent defense, like a decent offense and a decent defense on a team, and they're playing the Cardinals, I think you roll out whatever defense that is decently confidently. Chiefs versus Denver. The Chiefs have been pretty hot lately on defense. And, all the Broncos look good last week with Drew Lock. I'm not sold on Drew Lock. I'm not sold on the Broncos. I think that they are going to be terrible in this one. The potential of them not being terrible is why I have the Chiefs all the way down at 13. But the Chiefs could easily be a top 10 D this week. We've got the Dolphins and the Giants at 14 and 15. They're playing each other. God, these teams are both just pitiful. Both have terrible defenses, so it's like kind of nerve-wracking to try to pick one of these defenses. But what if it's Eli Manning at quarterback for the Giants? What if there's no Devontae Parker, for the Dolphins? The Dolphins who went for 8 field goals, couldn't score a touchdown against the Jets, 7 for 8 on field goals. Scored 21 points, 7 field goals, Then the Giants, both these offenses are so inept that I think either one of these defenses, although they're also inept, could have a huge week just because of injuries and ineptitude on the offensive side of the ball. We got the Titans at Houston. Titans could go off. Houston could be terrible. This is a boom or bust game because I think it's going to be a shootout. Houston versus Tennessee. I don't think it's going to be a defensive game. I think it's going to be a shootout. Both teams scoring a ton of points. But there is a potential. I think there's a decent potential, like 20% chance that Tennessee blows the doors off of Houston, and Houston has an embarrassing day, and like they did last week against Denver, and there's a chance that the Titans defense booms really big and finishes in the top 5. There's also a chance that the Titans defense, the Texans have a huge day, score a ton of points, and the Titans defense are like totally ruin you in fantasy, get you negative points. So I think there's a lot of volatility, which is why I have the Titans ranked so low. But if you want to take a chance on like a boom potential for a defense, take the Titans this week. Rams at Dallas, Cowboys at Rams. Well, that doesn't make sense. Rams at Dallas, Cowboys versus Rams is how it should say. I think that'll be a bit of a defensive game. Or it's got potential, to be a bit of a defensive game. It's also got potential to be a shootout. I'm not sure which way of those two ways it's going to go. So if it goes the defensive way, I think that either one of these defenses could be a quality defense. Dallas can get after the passer. If Jared Goff has pressure in his face, he's terrible. So there's potential there. And then look at the Rams defense. They're just stacked. They have so many playmakers on defense. They've been heating up in the last few weeks. The Rams are a pretty good team. There's potential there for both defenses. There's also a potential shootout, and both those defenses could be terrible. Bucks at Detroit. That's just a consequence of David Blau. I think, Blau is not going to be good. I think the Buccaneers are going to be able to score some points offensively. Detroit's going to have to try to keep up a little bit, and that I'm assuming. So the Bucs are going to be able to stop the run, that's for sure. So it's going to be on Blau's arm to try to keep up with the Bucs. So the Bucs have like the best run D, right? So it's going to be, and they have a terrible pass D. So it's going to be on Blau's arm, and I just think that there's a decent potential for the Buccaneers to be able to get some interceptions, maybe some sacks, defensive touchdown. Now, it's the Buccaneers, so that's why I have them ranked so low, but they've got boom potential. And then the last one I'll say is Houston at Tennessee. That was just basically rounding out my top 20. I don't like Houston at all. There's basically no situation that I would play them. So that wraps up this episode of Joel Empey Talks NFL. I want to thank you for watching the video. Please subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate the subscriptions. Share it with your mom. Share it with your friends. Follow me on Twitter at Empey Talks. You can see that on the screen right now, and it'll be in the description box below. Once again, please comment in the YouTube comments. Any fantasy football, gambling questions, anything you want to know about football, I'd be happy to go back and forth with you, give you any advice that you might have. If you could never have enough advice going into the fantasy playoffs, so let me know any start-sit questions, waiver wire questions, anything like that. And hey, until next time, cheers, friends.